Hi, I'm Dan Danford. We're doing a series of podcasts for DadsDivorce.com called Money Made Easy. Usually take a look at a question that's been posed to us by one of the viewers of the website. This week's question is pretty simple. I realize I'm probably a little late in the game to do this, but how do I get started in investing? How do I know what investments will work best for me? That's a terrific question. A lot of people kind of get involved in investing by default. They have a 401k at work maybe, or they have a savings account at home, and they just start looking around at investments, and before long they have kind of a makeshift portfolio without a whole lot of thought involved. And so I think it's probably a really good idea to kind of start with a clean sheet of paper and take it from there. The question of how to get started in investing really is a question of what do you want to accomplish. I mean, that's the first question to answer. What are my investment goals? What are my family financial goals? And from there, then we can develop some kind of plan on how to go about investing. And it's important that you identify those goals because the proper investment is really tied to the individual goal. Like I said, a lot of people get into investing by default, and they get all caught up in the notion of, what's going to make me the most money over the next week or month or 6 months or year, and they don't really tie that goal to a particular thing that they're trying to achieve. And as a result, everything gets jumbled and you get kind of a makeshift portfolio. So what I want you to do first of all is understand that there is no perfect investment. Just like there is no bad investment. There are a ton of investments out there, a ton of options. But in truth, most of them are okay when they're tied to a particular goal. Now take a bank deposit, for example. Now I'm not real fond of bank deposits. I don't like checking accounts or savings accounts or even bank certificates of deposit very well. But they're perfect for certain kinds of investing. Take that emergency reserve account for your family. That's the perfect place to put it. This is money that you've set aside so that if you have an emergency come up, you can go get that money and take care of it. Now Dave Ramsey talks a lot. His goal is to have a $1,000 emergency reserve. And he says that's the first things that people ought to do for their family. Now, you put that money in the bank, and then if the washing machine dies or the alternator goes out of the car or any of those kind of emergency things that happen, you can go get the money out of the bank and take care of it. And you've put that worry to bed. Okay? Now, that's the wrong place to go buy shares of stock. Okay? Because stocks fluctuate pretty wildly, and some stocks fluctuate a lot. It'd be a real mistake to put your $1,000 emergency reserve account into 50 shares of some stock just before the stock market took a tumble. Because then you'd end up with having $400 or $500 precisely when you needed to, that $1,000. So that's a wrong match between investment purpose and investment type. Okay? So for the emergency reserve, you're going to go for that money market fund or that bank account or maybe even that bank certificate of deposit. Now when we talk about college investing, it's a little bit different. Now with college investing, depending on the age of your kids, that could be something with a 10 or a 15 or even a 20-year time horizon. So now it makes sense to go out to some of those investments that do better over a period of time. A good growth stock mutual fund might be a good fit here. I often recommend the 529 plans from various states, and that's a good fit. Most of those are funded by mutual funds or even what they call life cycle funds or target date funds, where basically the fund itself is tied to when you'll need the money. Now the one caution I'll say to that is a lot of people talk to me about these college accounts. They say, well, my child is 13 years old, so we only have 5 years before that goes, so I'm going to just put my money in the bank. And I'm okay with that. I just want you to understand, the entire bill for college doesn't come due on the first day they report. Okay? Most of us, if you look at the typical college career today, it lasts longer than 4 years. It's typically 5 years or so. And that 5th year of payments doesn't come due until they start at the 5th year of school. So even though you say my child is going to start school at age 18, the truth of the matter is you're still going to be spending some of that money when they're 22 or 23 years old. Okay? Which means that portion of the money it has a longer time horizon. So growth type mutual funds, target funds, life cycle funds, all of those are appropriate for college. Whereas if you put the money in the bank for college, you're going to have less money when the time comes. It's not a good fit. Similarly, if you're setting aside money for retirement, you're going to be investing that money. Let's just assume for a second that you're 30 years old today. Okay? You're probably going to retire at age 65, which is 35 years hence. And the tables tell us that you're likely to live another 25 or 30 years after you retire. So the time frame on that money is much, much longer. Now here's where you can afford to go out and become fairly aggressive. Because what happens is that the things that are the safest also provide the lowest returns. The things that are the riskiest, by that we mean more volatile, they fluctuate more, you can afford to have those in a portfolio that has a long-term orientation. So when I'm talking to people about retirement planning, I think it's a mistake to have things that are too conservative in your retirement portfolio. What you need to do is you need to look at things with good long-term growth prospects. That's why most financial advisors would say you probably ought to have growth-type investments, stocks, mutual funds, international investing in a retirement portfolio because it's such a long-term portfolio. And the last thing I'll say to you about that is there used to be a rule that people used to use, kind of a general rule of thumb, that said that you need to become quite a bit more conservative when you actually retire. That you need to pull money out of the stock market and things like that because now you're going to have to live off that money and it's a mistake to have it there in things that fluctuate in value. No longer the case. Most reputable advisors would tell you that that's not the thing to do today precisely because people live so long in retirement. Okay? That if you put all your money in the bank CDs or whatever when you turn age 65, it will lose purchasing power every single year, and eventually you'll get to the point even 10, 12 years out where it's buying half as much as what it did when you set it aside. Okay? So again, the whole purpose behind investing is to find investment options that match up to your particular objectives. Okay? So going back to your original question, how do you get started with investing? Well, the first step is figure out what it is you want to accomplish. What are the goals that you and your family have financially? And then you start choosing investments that match up with those goals. You can also go to the library. There are tons of books on investing. And what I would suggest are some of what I call primers, the basic books. A couple of writers that I can tell you that would be helpful. One is a fellow named Jonathan Clements. Another fella is a guy named Andrew Tobias. That's all you need to get started. Don't make it more complicated than it is. You can start out, and as you build bigger portfolios, then you can become more complex. That works out great. But to get started, you just need some basic building blocks, and that's what I've given you here. That's it for this week's Money Made Easy for DadsDivorce.com. We'll see you next time.